Hey, it's Rochelle Harrington, and you are watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I'm happy to be joined by Rochelle Harrington. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to dive into Geek Girl and your character Nat. But before we get into the new exciting show you have, I know that you have an extensive dance background. So I wanted to ask a bit about that. Tell me about your time as a dancer and what you learned from this art form.
Well, oh my gosh. So I started dancing when I was two. My mum tells me that I was sat in like the little rocking chair while she was cooking dinner and she put on some music and I was just bopping up and down in my little seat and she thought, I've got to put her into dance classes. And then it kind of just stuck. It started off, just being skipping around a classroom as a child. Then I started competing nationally when I was 5 years old. I continued that up until I was 18, proper dance mum style. Um, and yeah, trophies and medals and just a whole lot of fun. Yeah, and then I joined a couple of schools. I went to London Studio Centre for their performing arts little like it's like a side scholarship type thing. And then I also did that for the British Ballet Organisation too. I've been doing ballet the longest, but I'm trained in ballet, tap, contemporary, lyrical, jazz, street, commercial, as in just essentially all of it. Yeah, and I love to dance. And I think I'm saying I'm a lot. It to in terms of acting, it's really changed my way of how I can respond without using my voice because I think dancing evokes a lot of emotions and it means that you get to perform using your eyes and your body and just not your mouth. And so when, there's a scene where maybe you're not saying as much, but you need to feel something, I feel like dancing really gave me a little bit of leverage with that. And yeah, really grateful for it.
It's really cool to kind of hear that because, like you mentioned, it's kind of taught you to maybe appreciate more movement, like movement when you're speaking, and then even when there's like nonverbal cues and things like that. When did your passion for film, TV, and acting start? Like, when did you decide that this was the path you wanted to go? Because with all your dance background, it's almost like you could have made that decision that you wanted to go professional with that as well.
Right. So, I mean, ever since I was younger, I was a regular child who watched like a bunch of TV, probably too much TV. And there was Aladdin, which I've said in other interviews as well. Aladdin was my favorite film, and in terms of representation racially, I guess Jasmine was the only form of representation that I had, and it kind of sucked because she was, a cartoon, so there wasn't really much diversity there anyway. And I kind of decided when I was old enough to understand what insecurities were and then gained some of that. And then people at school started, saying some stuff as they do. I decided that, whatever I wanted to do in the entertainment industry, because I'd grown up in, the theater and dance and stuff, I was going to do it. And my main focus was going to be to put that foot in the door and to, help not even help other children, but just so that they have the option of somebody else to look at and go, if I want to do that for a career, I can also do that. So I think that was kind of when I decided that I wanted to do something in the arts altogether. Acting kind of came about when I was probably 12 or 13, when I started like taking some amateur like drama lessons. I decided to do it for GCSE as well, which is like our SATs in America, I think the equivalent, maybe not, I don't know, it could be chatting absolute rubbish. But yeah, no, so I studied drama and then kind of just blossomed in that. I mean, I've always loved films and TV, and it's always been like an underlying dream for me. The dancing was definitely a dream, but dancers have like quite a short shelf life. We have to retire early and it's super duper hard to get into the industry. It doesn't mean that, I didn't try and I don't want to try, but I just felt like acting had a part of my soul in a way that like dancing doesn't, because it definitely freed me a little bit. God, I sound so holistic, don't I? Crazy.
Very holistic, very spiritual way of thinking. You know, even at such a young age, you're like you're already thinking like, oh, the shelf life, the career might not be what you aspire it to be in like 10 years time. But I know you also played Donkey. You said in a production of Shrek the Musical, which is also a key memory or a core memory for you to have. You have studied the performing arts more recently. You have a diploma from Cirencester College. So tell me about your training, your studies. How have you been able to grow your craft through school and through other workshops?
Well, so through school, I think it was really eye-opening, interesting experience going from, high school to college. Like I said, studied drama in high school, and it was a very, very different kind of world. It was a little bit broad, and a lot of it was theoretical, a lot of it was writing. So, like the drama wasn't really like acting, there was probably about 50% of it where you were acting, and then the other 50% you were writing. And it was, you got a chance to analyze things, but it was more like English literature than it was, theory on drama. And then in college, I guess I opened up a little bit, because when I was in high school, kind of had the walls. I was kind of that teenage girl that was like super duper, I want to say not necessarily insecure, but I didn't want to branch out, and I didn't want to put myself out there. And then when I got to college, it was this like whole new world where there were different people from different walks of life, and most people were really, really friendly. So when I started drama there, I feel like just as a person, I had the chance to grow a little bit and to become more myself. I mean, obviously I was 16, 17 at that time, so how myself could I really have been? But we were the group of us that did the performing arts diploma. We were all very, very friendly with each other. We did a production of The Addams Family, which was so, so fun. I mean, I looked back on the video the other day with one of my friends, and it looked awful. It was a very, very awful production, but it was fun. At the time, we thought it was good. And I think that's the most important thing. I mean, obviously you want to put on a good production, but I definitely, from that experience, it taught me so much. Obviously, like I said, we learned a lot about Meisner and Brecht and a bunch of practitioners. Yeah, and it was good to learn about them, but I think the community was definitely the reason why I grew, because it was a safe space to almost, because acting is just coming into your own, isn't it? It's truth under imaginary circumstances, so without getting too boring. Yeah, and then obviously I went to Wilkes Academy I say obviously, that's not obvious. I went to Wilkes Academy for university, and I dropped out in January after 3 months of studying. It just wasn't the place for me. I feel like I'm a person that, I have to be all in a place. And if I'm not, then I'm probably going to leave, because I feel like, you've got this one life, and you've just got to do what you want, and you've got to do what's out to you, and, gives you a purpose and gives you that like feeling. I didn't get that from Wilkes, unfortunately. So I left, and then was really lucky enough to get the job on Geek Girl. So
I mean, if you're not in it wholeheartedly and you know that, it's kind of like, why do I want to put in the time and effort? And I'm sure like money is a factor as well. So, I mean, you're getting the experience, like firsthand experience in actual film sets. And that's all you can really ask for as a rising star, as an artist. You're also a triple threat. I know you mentioned, some past projects that involve music, but when did you know you also wanted to create original material? Tell me about that journey.
oh wow, okay. I got a piano when I was like 12. I still don't, I'm self-taught on piano and guitar and stuff, so I'm not very, very good. But when my parents and my grandparents started like flooding me with these instruments and was like, you should learn how to do this. And obviously, because I would sing quite a lot obnoxiously in the house anyway, that my family were like, shut up, Rochelle, we're trying to watch television. So that was the point where I was like, oh, well, I could just like learn some songs on YouTube. And then also, if I know the songs, I can sing them. And then I guess when I was 16 or 17, and I met a really good friend of mine, her name is Bonnie. She writes original music. So, so beautiful. When I would listen to that, I would be like, wow, okay, so obviously it's a very hard thing to do, but let me just try and dabble in it. And then, just for fun, I guess. It's nothing that I plan on releasing, but it's a great form of therapy, I guess, just releasing emotions. And also it's really nice to say that you've created something and like a sound, because I feel like music is the one thing that can indefinitely bring the world together. I feel like throughout all of history, like we've had music when we've had, you know, horrible things going on and, you know, people feeling sad and stuff. So I think music is definitely a way of healing the world. And I'm not in any way saying that my music can do that, because it probably can't, and no one will listen to it because I haven't really made any. But yeah, it's kind of like a little diary for me. You know, some people journal, some people write, and I write songs. So
What kind of genre do you gravitate towards? Like, how would you define your current sound? Like, who are some artists that inspire you?
oh wow. So original song wise, it would have to be the closest would have to be Adele. Um, not in vocals because me and her don't match at all, but just the type of music, very kind of like oh, and like mellow. It's the kind of thing that you would put on in like a reception to an office. I feel like it's not heavy metal music. Um, trying to think who else. Probably in terms of sound, maybe I want to say Billie Eilish only because like it's a soft sounding kind of thing, but I also don't want to say Billie Eilish and then get compared to Billie Eilish and have people be like, you don't sound like Billie Eilish, get out. I know I don't sound like Billie Eilish, but yeah, Billie Eilish and Adele kind of style wise.
I mean, those are some great artists to look up to and kind of aspire to. And I mean, you say you're not really a singer and you've been writing, but you sounded great. You released a short like snippet of an original back in December. Say all of the things in my head, make my bed on the frame of my Catholic guilt. Shame all of the wanting for more, come on strong, holding on to the thought of novels and drama, the fantasy genre where patience is pretty and love is witty, and it's not a pity at all. On Instagram, and I've like replayed it because there's a lyric in there that I think is just so beautiful. So I don't know if you can kind of break that down for me at all, but it was the one that was like holding on to the thought of novels and drama and fantasy genre where patience is pretty and love isn't witty. I thought that was so good. So take me through a bit of like that thought process for you. Like, how do you get your ideas onto paper?
Okay, so first of all, like that little snippet of the lyric, that was kind of to pay homage to the fact that I'm always reading and I'm always watching romances, and I have this like great, and I feel like we all do, have like this expectation of what we want love to be, and it's we want a fairy tale, and everyone deserves a fairy tale, but then you kind of step out into the real world, and it's a tiny little bit bleak because the boys and the girls, they just don't get it. And they don't understand that I just want good, nice love, wholesome love. And everyone's like, no. So I kind of popped that lyric in there because I felt like, you know, that I'm only asking for one thing. And I feel like it's so simple to do. Do you know what I mean? Just respect and loyalty and kindness. And it just doesn't happen ever. So yeah, I popped that in there to be like, and it was okay, so I kind of only write about one person. This is fully putting myself on a fishing rod here. I only ever write about one person, and this is the man I have been in love with for like 5 years. It's been the longest time, and it's so annoying. And maybe I shouldn't mention his name. He probably won't watch this anyway, but he knows who he is. Yeah, it's gone now, but it's definitely something that stayed with me as my first love. You know, I met him when I was 15, and it kind of just carried through. It was a very big on and off thing. You know, we've had relationships in between, and I just felt so drawn to like the first love trope. I texted him the other day, actually. I didn't get a response, so that's
Guy,
great.
what are you doing? I mean, he's writing music about you. That's like the most, who's it? People like Taylor Swift, like everyone writes about, relationships and stuff. But I just thought, that line, it was so poetic because there are so many ways of, talking about unrequited love and things like that. But you did it in a way that was also true to yourself because It kind of ties into Girl because I know that you were probably one of the few cast members who were so like such a big fan of the series before you were cast and a part of the show. Before we get into the show, I wanted to talk about your mixed British and Sri Lankan heritage. So, what can you tell me about your cultural background and how it shaped your identity?
So when I can't really give an age, but ever since I was born, really, my parents tried to incorporate, the Sri Lankan culture, with food and with parties. And I really, really loved it. It was just so unfortunate that when you get to the age, especially in certain parts of Britain, that people like to say stuff. I was in secondary school and I just felt so embarrassed by my culture and my heritage and who I was as a person. And I hate that I felt like that, but it's just kind of how my timeline went. And it was really sad. And then when I got to the age of 17 or 18, I kind of sat down with my mom and we had a chat, and she taught me a lot about, our family members and things like that. And it's when I really, I guess, the friends that I made as well. So many things in my life kind of led me to feeling confident and empowered by who I was and, the color of my skin. And instead of listening to those people who would say things, negative stereotypes and, things about being brown, I kind of learned to lock those in a little box and put them away, because actually it is so beautiful coming from such like a small, tiny island with, beautiful, delicious food and I was going to say beautiful, delicious people. I just meant beautiful people. And it's such an incredible experience to be from that country. Obviously I was born here, I wasn't born over there, so very British through and through personality wise, but I love that I have parents who can bring culture into the home. And to kind of, I felt very bad that I went through like a good 3-4 years of my life rejecting my culture. So when I turned 18, I got some like Sri Lankan inspired tattoos. So I can't read the home language, which is so upsetting, but my mum wrote it for me, and I got "Her Life is Good" tattooed in Sinhalese on my rib cage. And I've got a little elephant tattoo because when I was 13, I went over there. It's such a beautiful country. I will always recommend everyone go to ride an elephant, which was so unethical and I would never do it now, but I was 13 at the time. So, I didn't know any better. But yeah, I definitely think family and talking to them and growing up a little bit. I think maturing was the biggest thing that made me be like, oh, okay, cool. So this is who I am. And whether I like it or not, I feel like I should embrace it. Otherwise, I'm just going to live in this like little bubble of negativity. And no one wants that.
There's never like a wrong age to reconnect with your culture. And I think a lot of it also comes with, lack of visibility when you were younger. Like, you mentioned, you didn't see people with the same color of your skin, like on film and TV and things like that. So it's all kind of connected, but I'm glad you have, your parents and your mom there to kind of teach you about that culture now. And hopefully you get to return to Sri Lanka in the future with them and get to visit and get more immersed in that culture. Before we get into Geek Girl, I will note to everyone watching or listening that we are discussing spoilers, so please make sure you have watched season 1 in its entirety. Before continuing, you of course star as Natalie Grey. So what can you share about your audition process and what drew you to this project?
Well, it was a very, to me anyway, quick audition process. It was like my first introduction into the acting world in general. So I wasn't really sure of what to expect. I was sat at home after quitting university and I was like, oh my God, what do I do with my life? And I was panicking. And I went onto Instagram and I saw that they had an open casting call for the role of Harriet. And I thought, oh my gosh, Geek Girl, they're turning that into a series. That's incredible. And I thought, okay, they said that they were looking for someone, white and ginger. And obviously I read that and I thought, me, yeah. So I emailed them and I said, hey, I know I did not meet a single one of your requirements, but I do have freckles sometimes in the summer. So here's a photo of me and do what you want with that. And then really, really luckily, I mean, to my surprise, they emailed me back and they said, yeah, sure. I mean, audition for Nat Grey, please. So I did. I sent in the self-tape. I was, sat at home. I didn't have any self-tape equipment because I didn't know really what a self-tape was. So put my phone up on a bunch of pillows and chairs and stood behind my door and, did the scene. Then I got a call back and asked to go to London. So I went to London, I did the audition. I showed up 45 minutes late to the audition because the Ubers didn't work. And that's something I've now learned about living in London, is they are so unreliable. So yeah, I went to the audition. I came back, and 2 weeks later I got an email saying that I'd gotten the job, but the email went into my spam folder, so I never got the email. So I got a second email saying, hey, can you call this number? So I was sat at a cafe in my little hometown, and it was full, and I phoned them, and when I phone people, I put them on speaker. I'm really bad at that. So I put them on speaker and I was like, hello, and they were like, hey, just want to let you know you got the role of Nat Grey. And I started swearing. It was horrible. But then everybody around me heard, and they were like, oh my gosh, what? And then I said, I just got a role, and everybody was cheering, and it was great. And then over the other end of the phone, they were like, yeah, you can't tell anyone. And I went, well, you should have led with that, because I've told like 15 people now. I'm sorry, I can't go back.
Everyone in the cafe.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell them what it was for, so that's fine. But yeah, no, it was just such a wonderful, it was a short experience, but it was genuinely one of the most surreal experiences in my life. I don't think I've ever felt that excited about anything.
Do you remember what piece of like dialogue or what scene you had to do in your audition?
Yes. So from the show, it was the scene on the boat, like the boat taxi, where Nat says, we're doing it, we're really doing it. And Harriet goes, doing what? And then Nat goes, starting the rest of our lives. That was the scene. And then I think there were a couple of scenes that were cut, actually, that I auditioned with that just didn't make it to the show. There was another one that I did where it's the one where Harriet and Nat are at the modeling casting, and now they're leaning against the radiator, and then Natalie says, maybe they could be looking for a 6'5" blonde or something. She's trying to reassure herself as well as assure Harriet that, it doesn't matter if they get picked. It's okay if it was their lifelong dream. There's other dreams.
Did you have a good feeling after your auditions that, you might get this part? Or was it one of those things where you don't want to like put your hopes up too high?
Well, it was a little bit of both. I mean, I never really knew that I was going to get the role. If anything, I knew that I wasn't going to get the role because it was an open call casting. So many people could have auditioned, and there are so many talented people. Also, with having zero acting experience, it kind of would make sense if they went with someone more reputable, someone who like knew what they were doing, and didn't need to be told to stand on your mark. And then I go, what's a mark? So I definitely didn't expect it. I didn't think I was going to get it. I just kind of auditioned, and I thought, wow, how fun it is to have an opportunity to audition for something like this. And I was like really gassing myself up about it. I told all of my friends. It was just a fun experience, and I kind of took it at face value for what it is. It's a learning curve. It's something. I just wasn't expecting to get it, and then when I did, I was like, whoa, okay, life changed.
Well, I'm so glad that you got the role, you booked it, and you did so well as Natalie. How did you prepare? Like, did it involve rereading Holly Smale's books? Did you have discussions with the creative team or do any additional research in the fashion industry?
So I did, yes. I'm definitely not a fashion girl, as you can probably tell via top half. I don't really know much about fashion at all. So the first thing I did was Kendall Jenner, Gigi Hadid, I was going to say Bibi Hadid, Bella Hadid. Instagram them, Googled them, just because it's the easiest form of like they're right there. It's very accessible. And then I delved into some history. I mean, there's a snippet in the show where I talk about Cara Delevingne. So I did some research on her also. Lots of research being done. I did go ahead and reread the first two books, just to like revisit that child part of me that just loved to read those. I mean, those were the only books that I would ever read as a kid. So, and it was just crazy to me that I got to, be part of the show 10 years later. I mean, it just feels like such a full circle moment. So incredible. But yeah, I did have conversations with Holly Smale, the writer, as well, and she assured me that everything I was doing was okay, because I was definitely very insecure because I was around such incredible people that had been in this industry for much longer than I have. So I didn't really know if I fit the character or if I fit the role or if I was doing anything right, but I was assured by Holly that it's all good, and if I wasn't doing it right, then they probably would have told me. So yeah, it's just a very good opportunity. I guess the other thing as well is that I had conversations with I guess the executives about the name change of Natalie Grey. This is something that's so interesting to me. Um, Natalie Grey is obviously the name of the character in the books. But then when they cast me, they changed her name to, I believe it was Natara Gill, just to make it sound a little bit more South Asian, a little bit more, ethnic, I guess. And while there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, I mean, Natara Gill is such a beautiful name anyway. I guess what I was thinking in my head was, you know, would fans of the book like that? Just because obviously her name's Natalie Grey. And also I feel like it was one of the only name changes in there, apart from Nick Park and Yuji Lee. But yeah, I just felt like keeping it as Natalie Grey probably, I'm not really wording this right, am I? But I just wanted to keep it as Natalie Grey because I thought it was her name in the books, and also my name in real life. Obviously, it's Rochelle Harrington. Rochelle's a French name. Harrington's an English name. I'm not English or French, but it's there. So I thought, it would be great if we could just keep Natalie Grey. And when I tell you the executives and our producer Zoe Rocha, so lovely and understanding. The second I brought it up, she said, "Yeah, okay, fine." Anything that I had to say about about the show or about the character, she would be totally okay with. Like, she put so much trust into everyone, and she just knew what she was doing. She was honestly just the best producer ever.
Can you share any details that you created yourself or discussed with others as to Nat's backstory and her upbringing? Like, we know in the show, like in the book, she lives with her mother.
Yes. So I know that in the book, so she lives with her mother. Mother and father are divorced. And I kind of created the little backstory myself as to the reason that she wanted to be a model, because I think in the books it does mention briefly that Natalie wants to be a model because one of her mum's friends compliments her once and says, "Oh, you're so pretty, you should be a model." And then that's kind of like her driving get-go. So for me to make the character more three-dimensional, I guess I took that and I thought, okay, what would I have done in that situation? Because I was never told that as a child. I was a very ugly child. And I kind of thought, right, well, I would put so much worth into myself from that one little comment. And I thought, having divorced parents, especially at a young age, would probably be like very difficult. And, to have somebody go, okay, this could be your future, this could be your career. I would be so determined to get that as like, now that's my only goal. That is the only thing that I ever want now in my life. And it has to happen because, the possibilities of it not happening are really huge. Just like, when you get married, you go in with the intention of staying together forever. And then when you get divorced, it's a sad, annoying, upsetting outcome for everyone involved, but it's not something that you would have banked on when getting married. So I think, to me, Natalie would have had that thought of, modeling is the only thing I can do. It's the only possibility. If I don't do that, it's nothing. Therefore, I have to do it because then there's no other option. So I think that's what kind of made her so passionate about it. And me creating that tiny little backstory helped me feel the like perseverance of the character and feel like the need and the like burning passion to become a model, because obviously I don't have that in real life. I do not want to model. But she definitely does. And it was, yeah, I think that's definitely what really helped her, spark the passion.
It's great to get into that mindset of your character. Like you mentioned, she really internalized that comment and was just trying so hard to manifest it to happen. This could be maybe uncovered more in the future, so this isn't like facts or canon, but did you ever think about like the relationship that she has with her dad? Because that's something that's not brought up in season 1.
See, I did think about that. And again, I've taken some of my friends' life experiences, obviously with their permission. Again, one of my good friends, she doesn't speak to her father. And I was kind of playing with the possibility that she would speak to her dad, that Natalie wouldn't speak to her dad, and how would it change her character, if she had a relationship with her father. And I was thinking that maybe in my head, he was this very, very busy businessman who didn't necessarily have time for Natalie, so she didn't get the attention that she maybe wanted from her dad. And then another layer to that would have been, you know, she wants him to see her. So one way that she can do that is by being in these magazines and these runways and becoming this big name, Natalie Grey, so that maybe her father would reach out to her and, you know, form some form of rapport, some form of connection with her. So I think maybe it's a way for her to feel seen by a family member.
I love that. And I think it also plays into the fact that, I feel like I'm not sure if it's ever said, I didn't think it was what her mother does, but her mother, I feel like, is also a very busy person because Nat spends sometimes she just goes into, Harriet's home in the morning and eats breakfast with them. So it's one of those things where I feel like she hasn't necessarily been neglected, but at the same time, her parents haven't always been there for her, maybe like in all these big moments or some of these even smaller moments in her childhood.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I felt in the books, if I can remember correctly, is that her mum wasn't necessarily always too attentive. Like she was always there physically, but you know, mentally maybe not so much. And she would, I don't know if I'm recalling this right, but she went on a lot of dates with a lot of different men. She's definitely, you know, the beautiful fashion woman. And I guess that's again why Natalie really had like an awe for fashion in general and not necessarily just modeling, because her, you know, her mother would take care of herself and, you know, clothes and heels and everything glamorous. And that's what kind of gave her the underlying passion to want to be a designer, I guess. So yeah, no, I think the person who played my mum, so Hersha Verity, lovely, beautiful, beautiful lady. Oh, I love her so much. She brought a certain warmth to Nat's mum that maybe I didn't get in the books. I kind of felt like she was a little bit, like you said, neglectful. But I think Hersha's spin on the mum was definitely more warm and definitely one that I would have preferred anyway. She was, yeah, she was a good mum to Nat. And I think that that kind of works a lot better for the show as well and the dynamic.
In your words, how would you describe your version of Nat as a person? Like, what are her core values and personality traits outside of, this big fashion dream that she has? Like, what did you really want to focus on in any of her mannerisms and your overall portrayal?
So I think Nat is a very protected person in general. I think when she first met Harriet, she kind of knew, okay, this one, like I said, she's got, when she has her mind set on something, it is not budging. She is a very stubborn kind of character in all the best ways and all of the worst ways. She's a very loyal person. I would say she's fierce in her personality. All of the things at a surface level are kind of like what I've just described to you. But then when I think about things that maybe fly under the radar and go under the surface, I would say she is slightly insecure. I mean, I wanted to bring the experiences of a South Asian teenage girl in Britain and the reality of it into Nat without being too forward and being too explicit, of course. But I'm thinking, you know, being South Asian myself and growing up as a South Asian in Britain, especially in the part of Britain that I, you know, grew up in, it wasn't the most fulfilling, nurturing place, and it just wasn't the greatest environment. So I kind of imagined, especially in the bits where Natalie was, you know, rejected quite often in the show, without saying anything, I kind of in my head internalized the fact that she would probably be thinking, of course I didn't get it, you know, like look at me, this is, you know, I could have guessed this from a mile away. So, you know, it was silly of me to have this dream. That was kind of the internal monologue that I was going with. Obviously I wasn't going to say anything about that because I think it's quite a mature theme for younger audiences also, but it's definitely something that helped me bring realness to the character in a way, because, you know, it would be silly of me to ignore the fact that, you know, Natalie is in a South Asian person's body, and so she's going to have the South Asian experiences, you know, South Asian British experiences even. So it was definitely very interesting to kind of riff on that and, you know, play on the heritage thing a little bit.
It's so interesting to hear like your thoughts behind the scenes and how you're kind of formalizing and processing her thoughts and emotions. How would you describe her personal style and self-expression? Because we see a lot of the school uniform, but we also get to see that initial outfit that she wanted to wear to London Fashion Week that she didn't get the opportunity to showcase.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not Rochelle's style at all. I think for Natalie, it is very, very fitting. She's she's very colorful. I think she's very out there. Whilst her personality comes across as super duper sharp, I think her clothes and everything that she decides to wear kind of balances it out and gives her that more friendly persona. She loves dressing colorfully. I think it's really funny how in the show, I'm quite a small actor anyway, person, just in general. In the show, they have her whenever she's wearing trainers, kind of like the big chunky trainers that add on a good like 3-4 inches to my height. I think that's interesting for Natalie's character anyway, because it works because she wants to be a model, and maybe she's not tall enough to be a model, so it's fine, just put some platform wedges on and you'll be tall enough, it's fine. I think her style is really, really cool. I definitely don't think I could pull it off now, but I think Natalie does it brilliantly.
What major similarities and differences did you see between yourself and Nat, especially after spending a whole season with her and you really got to kind of get to know her and understand her?
Yeah, so the similarities I would say is, gosh, I think we're both pretty good friends. I would like to think I'm a good friend. I think we're both super determined in a sense to pick a goal and try and get there as best as we can. I think differences though would have to be that I'm not so be all and end all. I'm not so like, this is the only thing I can ever possibly do with my life. I'm very kind of free flowing in a way that Natalie probably isn't. I think Natalie has so much reason to have to feel pressurized, because she feels like there's all of this added pressure onto her, and also she's constantly getting knocked from left, right and center. I think that's another similarity actually, is me and Natalie both, when we feel like we're maybe being pushed to the ground a little bit, like we'll sit there for a second, maybe cry, feel sorry for ourselves, do the whole pity party, but then we get back up and then we'll try again. And if we can't take that route, we'll take another route. I think that's something that I really loved about Natalie, and I kind of learned to be that through Natalie, because I definitely wasn't like that before we started filming, and then after we ended filming I kind of took that little piece of her with me. And I think that's something I will always be grateful to her as a character from, is giving me a little bit of a broader idea of the world.
Tell me about Nat and Harriet's friendship. Like, in your opinion, what does Nat see in Harriet and value about their friendship of over 10 years?
I think it's they're so different. I think Nat loves Harriet because of the time they've spent together. I think because Harriet is one of those people, one of those characters that you will love if you spend time with her, but no one bothered to like break the barrier and spend time with her, which is the reason why Nat and Harriet are like super duper close, because Harriet never had anyone kind of reach out and be like, hey, I want to be your friend. So I think what Nat loves about Harriet is, I think, her fact telling, because every time I was like listening to Em speak as Harriet, I would just sit there and be so in awe of everything she's saying, and I would be like a sponge, and like so many facts were just being thrown at me. I think that's one thing Nat loves about Harriet. I think Nat also loves the fact that Harriet is just so kind and soft in a way that Nat maybe isn't. So it's something that, Nat can maybe take from Harriet from time to time, because Nat has a very hard shell exterior and Harriet maybe doesn't. So I think because they're so different, polar opposites attract. And I think that's what makes them such good friends.
So Harriet is bullied regularly and quite viciously by Lexi and the Olives, of which, Nat, Toby, the rest of the students are privy to. Why do you think this behavior is accepted as the norm at the school? Like, why is there no adult intervention?
I think it's very obvious. The scene that really gets me is the scene where Lexi, when Mr. Fines leaves the class, Lexi kind of goes, put your hands up if you hate Harriet manners. I think that's such a good scene acted by Mia anyway. It's so incredible. I adore her. I think as a scene, it really shows how things happen behind closed doors, and teachers are mainly, especially in British schools, they're there to teach and they're there to do their jobs, and very few teachers really like care about what's going on with the kids. I mean, some of my friends are teachers, and I just see how much they love the kids and how much they care about them. But some of them, when they turn their backs, things will happen, and that's out of their hands, because obviously Mr. Fines did not see what was going on, and so he couldn't take any action. I feel like the reason the bullying happens, I mean, I guess that's something Mia could probably speak on, but Lexi doesn't like how clever Harriet is. Like, Harriet is just such an intellectual person, and it makes Lexi feel a little bit inferior. And I think people just hop on the bandwagon, if one person hates, everybody else hates. People love to hate. So I think that's the reason that Harriet gets a lot of stick for who she is as a person. But in reality, it's just because people admire her, and people love who she is as a person, that it's like, oh, I love you so much, I hate you kind of thing.
Definitely. And then there's the whole peer pressure element to that. And that scene was really well acted. I'm sure Mia's nothing like Lexi in real life. And I do love how with Nat, when she kind of slaps the phone out of Lexi's hand in episode 2, to kind of defend and be on Harriet's side. But at the same time, even for Nat, how fiercely defensive she is, she still lacks the ability to do more. Like at the talent show, no one kind of knows what to do. There's a bit of, that passive attitude, because what can they do at that point? So that was kind of like another sad kind of moment to see for Harriet, but she really kind of stood up there.
Yeah, I mean, in the book, the person who throws the paint was originally Nat. But I think they changed it to Harriet because they wanted more moments of Harriet really taking her own and coming into who she is as a person. And I think that really works in the show. I think it was so difficult for me to play in that scene, because obviously as Nat, I want to say something, because Nat's character is very like opinionated, and she will say something. And I feel like Nat, if it wasn't written in the script, would probably have run over there and slapped them all. And then like, sorry, who are you? But I think it worked really, really well for Harriet's character to have her be, the center of it in that episode. I think it was just so very difficult, because I, as an actor, was very confused. I was like, I want to do something, but I can't. And I guess that kind of fit in with what Natalie would have been thinking as well. Like, I want to do something, but I can't. Yeah, it was so frustrating for me as an actor to not be able to do anything, because I was really feeling Harriet in those scenes, and I was like, oh, poor girl.
I know watching it must have been so hard, and you could see the concern on Nat and Toby's face, and all of those parents and Nat's mom as well. I'm curious, which was your favorite scene to film and be a part of, and why?
Oh gosh, okay. To watch was the phone slapping scene, because I didn't think it was going to be that good, and then I watched it with my friends and family, and I thought that I like that scene. My favorite one to film would have been when Natalie gets rejected from Infinity Models, and she walks out, and she's kind of stood by the pier reflecting. I think that was, just as an actor and as a person, it was such an eye-opening experience to be able to tap into that emotion of sadness. I mean, I recently at the time had lost a friend, so I was feeling very emotional anyway, but it was really good to have that outlet to be able to be like, okay, cool, I need to cry in this scene anyway, so it works. And yeah, I just think it was such a beautifully solemn moment for Nat to have that, reflection on herself, and to realize, hey, maybe I'm not good enough for this. Her mindset wasn't the best in terms of saying I'm not good enough for this, but I feel like you really felt how she just felt like I'm at rock bottom now. But then we have to remember that she's 16, and she's that's not going to be her rock bottom, and also that it's a tiny blip in the road, and obviously at the end of the series she has her comeuppance, and it's great.
I mean, emotions are high, emotions are raw. And so I felt like it was very appropriate for her to just have that moment and be okay with, letting some tears out after that. And we'll talk a bit more about, maybe kind of that scene in particular. But I wanted to cycle back a bit because, like you mentioned, she was rejected by Infinity, by her idol, Wilbur Evans, at London Fashion Week. And then he goes to scout Harriet at school. And while they're both invited to that casting day, there's a sense, and maybe Nat also knows it, that she was only invited so that they could also get at Harriet. So On this day, what are her thoughts about Harriet's sudden interest in this fashion world, one that Nat has had for years?
Like, I think that she's always Harriet's friend first and foremost. I think she always, given the opportunity, would put her dreams on hold for Harriet. I think that's how much of a loyal friend she is. I think while she knows that, she's just there to tag along, just to come for the ride because she's there when Wilbur offers her the opportunity. I think she's in denial a little bit. I feel like, especially when she's going, she's excited because all she wants is to be a part of this world. So regardless of whether she's there of her own volition or because she's hitching a ride with Harriet, I feel like she's just so overwhelmed and excited by the models and the heels and the glitz and the glamour and the agency and everything. I think that's what really captures her attention, as opposed to, wow, I'm not their first pick. I think she knows that and she's kind of really upset, but she pushes it down because I think that's the type of person who feels what she needs to feel, but she pushes it down until it all comes up to the surface, which is why when she gets rejected, you see her shed like the tiniest little tear, but it's not anything massive because Nat is not a very emotional person outwardly.
I like that explanation because I feel like at boot camp, there wasn't any hint of, oh, I can't do this, I won't be selected. Like she was still confident there that, this could be a possible opportunity. So what is there anything specific you remember from Infinity's boot camp in episode 4? Like walking in heels, did you have to do a lot of practice with that?
We did. Me, and Manny, before we started filming, had a lovely little lesson with a lovely lady named Caroline who taught us how to walk. There's a video of it somewhere and it is atrocious. I cannot walk. I mean, it's very fitting that I can't walk because then it explains why I can't be a model. It was very difficult. I mean, I'm a dancer, as you know, so being in heels is something that's super duper easy for me. And modeling, I kind of thought before this whole process was, walk in a straight line and you'll be chill, you'll be fine. It is one of the most difficult crafts I think I've ever tried to teach myself or be taught. It takes so much precision and you have to look at a certain way and you have to feel a certain way. It's definitely very, very difficult modeling. Which kind of tells me that I won't be able to do it. But when we were practicing, it was a whole lot of fun in the heels. So yeah, lots and lots of practicing.
And with Nat outside dealing with that rejection, why does she automatically assume that Harriet was not selected?
I think this is such a difficult one because I was thinking about this. It's kind of a little bit mean to Harriet to be like, oh, well, if I didn't get it, you didn't get it either. But I think Nat's so pure in her intentions towards Harriet. I think because Harriet walked out and there were still models in the room, I think that's what made Natalie be like, oh, maybe you didn't get it because there are still models in there and they wouldn't have selected you and then rejected everybody else. They probably would have rejected everybody else and selected you. I think she kind of used that logic with the sense of assuming that Harriet didn't get in.
I think that's interesting because yeah, like you mentioned, you kind of are trying to figure out like why did she not think that? Because again, she's Nat's a smart person, so she knows that they kind of were interested in Harriet in the first place. But I guess during the boot camp, they're also talking about all these tall models, and they're like, okay, well, maybe we would definitely be behind them in terms of like a pecking order or a pick or something like that. And episodes 5 and 6, Nat believes that Harriet is sick at home, but later sees that photo of her and Nick in Canada. What is she thinking and feeling towards Harriet? Like, did she ever think that Harriet would lie to her? Was there ever any jealousy once she found out where she truly was?
I don't think that Nat was truly jealous, I kind of toyed with the idea a little bit that Nat could be a jealous person, but then I thought, I don't think she would be. I think she's so team Harriet in every sense of the word that she's just so upset that Harriet lied to her because it's kind of like, come on, like I'm such a good friend to you and you still didn't feel like you could tell me this thing. Like, and this is a good thing that's going on with your life. Like, I know it's my dream, but I've made it clear that I put my life on hold for you. and you couldn't even tell me when something good happens. Like, do you not trust me? Do you not like me or something? I think more than anything, she probably felt really insecure with their friendship, because I think the reason she felt so secure in their friendship in the first place is because Nat is Harriet's only friend. And so she was like, that's the role, that's the title I will probably have for the rest of my life. But then she starts to see that Harriet is maybe not telling her the full truth. And she's like, okay, so we're not as close as I thought. And do you have other friends? I don't think it's jealousy. I think it's more like she feels very left behind, because it was her dream and that is her best friend. And in more senses than one, she's kind of betrayed her a little bit, you know? I think Harriet always has the best, most purest intentions, but I think the way that it seemed to Nat was, that's crazy. You've taken my dream. Like, you couldn't even tell me to sit down and have a conversation and make sure I was okay, because I would have been okay if we spoke about it, but we didn't. So now I'm sad.
Take me through the scenes on the bridge after Nat's interview and then at school the next day. Like, what emotions were you feeling, and how did you transmit that through Nat's dialogue to Harriet?
I feel like at this point, Nat is more angry than she is upset. As I said, I feel like she takes all of these like soft, vulnerable emotions and she pushes them deep down, and maybe it comes up as a very negative, not very healthy emotion. So when she's sad, she showcases that as anger. And I feel like obviously she wasn't really too angry on the bridge. I think when she was on the bridge and she sees Harriet, she was like, come on. Like, I think she was more disappointed than anything. I think she was just really like, come on, man, like, what's going on? And then obviously Harriet lets loose that she was with a boy, and she's like, okay, now that's stupid. Like we've been friends for so many years and you blew me off for this guy? Are you joking? So I think that's the pivotal point of when she becomes angry, because she's like, okay, you missed my interview. You might have a great excuse, you know, you might have been genuinely running late or whatever, but then she goes, I was with Nick. And then it's like, of course you were with Nick, you know. And I think it's so cool to have that little moment, because it shows in lots of teenage girl friendships how boys so often weave their way into it, break the girlfriends up, and half of the time the guy's oblivious. He doesn't even know that he's broken up a lifelong friendship. And that it just kind of shows how important to the girls it is, but also how silly the situation is, because obviously they reconcile at the end and everything's okay.
And Nick definitely was oblivious, because remember, he spent like a lot of the episodes or some of the episodes thinking that Harriet didn't like him, but rather it was the friendship with Nat. And I do really like how Nat called out Harriet's selfishness, because again, raw emotions. But I mean, to be fair, Harriet is the one who pleaded with Nat to let her help her and promised her that she would be there. So it's not like the other way around where Nat was like, okay, you have to help me. And so she did let her down in that moment. But she did forgive Harriet after her accidental revealing social media posts. So for Nat, why was this the right decision?
I think because she knows Harriet so well, and she saw a side of Harriet in the fashion world that she maybe hasn't seen before. And I think that's why she couldn't be angry at her, because she saw that and she was like, I would be angry. And if it was anybody else, I would be. But because Harriet truly has a love for it, and Harriet's never felt like she's come into her own or belonged anywhere, essentially. So for Nat to see that she's finally like, she's starting to blossom, she feels happy, she feels comfortable, and like she feels like she's in her little territory. Nat can't be mad at her, she can't be annoyed at her. And I think the spoiling of the the leaking of the UG campaign, I think was so important, because I feel like Nat was going to forgive her anyway, even if she didn't do that, because again, she could see how happy she was. But then when she spoiled the campaign, she knew that Harriet had good intentions, because she knows Harriet well. She knows that Harriet didn't think that was going to be a big deal. Like, Harriet is very, very clever, but she doesn't know much about the fashion world. So she just thought, look, Nat. But Nat knew that that was going to be a very big deal. And she thought, Harriet doesn't have a bad bone in her body. Like, whatever she did, she didn't mean it. And like, I know that she doesn't mean it. And I think that was when she goes, you spoiled something like massive for me, colossal for me. And that's what makes our friendship really good. And also the fact that you have such pure intentions, like you would never do anything to hurt me on purpose. I think that's kind of Natalie's thought process throughout the whole friendship fallout.
And then for Natalie, I'm assuming it's also like such a kind of heartwarming thing for her about their friendship is the fact that with that video, it wasn't even to defend that fake kiss to Nick, but it was just solely an apology and clarification for Nat.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting that Nat gets her closure. I don't even think she really needed it in a sense, because like I said, she knows Harriet so well. She knows the situation. It's upsetting, but she wants to be a fashion designer now. So I feel like all is right in the world.
She did send her that kind of like semi-passive aggressive text though, which is what spurred the the kind of public apology in the first place. But I love that they reconnected and they shared that sweet moment together. Meanwhile, for Nat, what did it mean to her to be encouraged by Miss Lord, her teacher, to experiment with fashion and even set up that internship interview for her?
I think her relationship with Miss Lord it's so lovely. I feel like she was almost a maternal figure for Nat a little bit. I think she took so much interest in Nat and what she was doing, and they have such a good connection teacher student wise. I think being in that textiles class so often, I mean, we see a lot of scenes in that textiles class. You see how Nat is really into like all of the fashion and all of the materials. And I think from the get-go, even though she wanted to be a model, I think because she had such a love for fashion, that it wasn't necessarily the modeling she liked about it, it was the fashion that she liked about it. And so, she was either going to do like wear the clothes or make the clothes, if that makes sense. And I think Miss Lord really aided her in seeing that she had potential, because she would give her words of affirmation. I think it was really nice for her to, every time come up to her and be like, Natalie, you're doing so great. You're doing such a good work. I love the patchwork. Da, da, da. I think, Miss Lord definitely influenced her positively in that sense, because I don't think Nat's the type of person to hear. I don't think she gets many compliments. I don't think she gets much words of appraisal from anybody, apart from Harriet. And obviously, she's so used to hearing that from Harriet because they've been friends for a decade. But Miss Lord was definitely, like, oh, you don't have to be nice to me, but you are, which means you see something in me.
It's so nice to have someone who believes in you, and like she sees that maybe with Harriet and Wilbur, for example. So to have her own kind of like fairy godmother to go those extra lengths for her. And she is accepted at the Institute of Fashion for an internship. We don't get too many details in the show, but can you share what that would entail for Nat?
I think in my mind, I think the internship would be working within what I would like it to be is her working with some UG Lee like execs, like the fashion designers from UG Lee, the people that make the clothes. So she can go in and collaborate and watch. I feel like she'd do a lot of seminars. Obviously a lot of her own stuff. At the end of the show, obviously she makes the Natalie Grey custom outfit for Harriet. I think that's really going to give her a leg up, because Harriet wears that to this important Bascar event. I think being an intern and then also having that piece of clothing on the line, I think that's hopefully going to weave Nat into a good career with fashion.
Do we think it's like a summer internship?
I think, I didn't even think about that. I feel like summer is very fitting. I feel like summer internship, yeah. Also kind of works for me as a person, because if we do get a season 2, touch wood, we will. I can come back. I've got brown hair. I really don't want to have my hair black again. So, it would be great to be like, yeah, she did a summer internship and she dyed her hair. And then now she's a new person.
I mean, that would be fitting. She's trying to kind of play the part and, be someone kind of new and in this industry. And you mentioned, Harriet ends up wearing Nat's dress to Bascar. She gives her the shout out on the red carpet and does their heart necklace gesture. How special was that moment for Nat, and how proud was she of Harriet?
I think she was part of her. I think the first part of her was very excited that her dress is being showcased. She's 16 years old and she's got this like something that she's made on like a national event. But I think most of it was, being the proud bestie. I think she looked at Harriet and she was like, you a month ago could not have even banked on this happening. I think it was such a cute moment where they held out their little triangles and Nat said, I love you, because I just think it was such a wholesome little moment. I think there wasn't much thought behind that other than, wow, that is my best friend. I think that's the only way that I can summarize that.
You did share most of your scenes opposite Emily as Harriet. So what can you say about them as a person and as a scene partner? Like, did the two of you spend additional time together or offset to build that chemistry and relationship?
We did. Emily, I will always be speaking about them in the most positive light. I speak about all my friends like they put the stars in the sky, because they're honestly, Em is just such a soft kind of character. Just as overall in a person, they are just fantastic. I don't even have the words, look, I'm stuttering. They are so sweet, so loving, so kind. Obviously, I walked onto set kind of like a little blind mouse. I didn't know what I was doing, and took me under her wing. Obviously, she's a year older than me, so we're very close in age. But I guess there was that, she was almost like a veteran for me. So she taught me, they taught me everything that I know. And they really made me a different person in all the best ways. I feel like we did sleepovers. We went to watch the Barbie movie when it came out, with like our little matching outfits. It was very lovely. But spending more time with them and having conversations with them, and deep conversations as well, I definitely found a comfort in them. And they have such good advice. They're just such a warm, soft person. And like I said at the beginning of filming, I was a completely different person. I was going through grief and being that sad little bean. And then the more time I spent with them, and the more time I spent with the cast in general, and when we came out of filming, I just felt like I had such a positive experience. And I felt like, okay, cool, you guys are now the people that I want to look up to for the rest of my life. You guys are fantastic. Like, the acting is phenomenal, and just as people, just the most down to earth, humble, incredible people that, if I could even be a fraction of all of them, oh my God, I'm going to start crying. Crazy. If I could be even a fraction of any of them, I feel like I'd be a very lucky person.
That's so sweet, and it was such a fantastic ensemble. I'm so glad you got that kind of community to kind of lift you and help you when you were going through some harder times. The series does touch on some more kind of important, heavy topics, neurodiversity without it defining Harriet, which is an aspect that's personal to both Holly Smale and Emily Carey. What can you say about what you learned personally about this topic and the messages this show sends to youth in the form of both neurodiversity but also bullying?
So one of my closest friends is autistic. She has autism, she's on the spectrum. And me and her have had many, many conversations before filming and before I even, Geek Girl was even a possibility. So I feel like I was, as well versed as a divergent person can be. Obviously, I could never put myself in the shoes of someone who is neurodivergent. But I think filming, I got to see some of the things firsthand, like the little idiosyncrasies and I think the talisman is something that I didn't really clock or know about. And then watching the series and seeing some of the stuff, like for Harriet, it's not just a little friendship heart like it is for Nat. For Nat, that it symbolizes their friendship, but I feel like for Harriet it symbolizes so much more. It's her friendship with Nat, and also something that consoles her, like keeps her grounded, makes her feel like that is who she is. And I think that is so beautiful. I learned a lot about how someone someone who is neurodivergent can feel in certain situations, and how it is definitely not how I would react, in the sense that my emotions would be regulated. And I guess I wouldn't even say that neurodivergency means you have unregulated emotions. It just means that you see the world in such a different lens. And I feel like Harriet's character especially sees it in so much more color than Natalie, and than any of the other characters, Toby as well. I think when they share that little moment about being polar bears behind the stage, I think that's so lovely. I think that for me, I can't really say much on neurodivergency just because I haven't first hand experienced it, but on set it was it was such an accepting environment, very accommodating to everyone. And then also filming the show, I learned a lot about, the little things. And I think it's so interesting, especially if you are neurodivergent, to watch the show and to pick up on the tiny little things. Like when I was sat watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, that. Like the way that Harriet doesn't like any of her stuff touching in her lunchbox. Like that, for example. I just think the way that the show is written and created is so intricately done. It's incredible.
And it's so like authentic and genuine to their experiences as well that was intertwined into the show. As your first film set, you've clearly learned a lot. So as a series lead, no less, like what was your experience on set like with the crew and the production, and what did you learn about, that behind the camera work as well?
They are genuinely, it confuses me to this day how so many incredible people can be put onto one project. There were so many people, like hundreds of people involved in this, and every single one of them was just a little ray of sunshine. And I felt like I got along with everyone, and I spoke to everyone, and it was all smiles all around, honestly. I think as time went along, I figured out what all the terminology was. I think the first scene that we shot was a little monologue of mine when I talk about Cara Delevingne, and I did not know the lines to that at all because they changed it like an hour before we got onto set, and I was really panicky. So the director, Declan O'Dwyer, he gave me a magazine and he gave me the script to put into the magazine. So I ended up reading the lines from the magazine. And I hope it doesn't look like I was reading the lines from the magazine. But I mean, that's what I mean by the set was so accommodating. Like you needed something, okay, cool, it's done. And there wasn't any arguments. We were all on a time crunch and everybody had the right to be super duper stressed, but nobody ever, everyone just led with so much kindness. And I think that's so important, especially, I'm just so grateful that it was my first experience.
If renewed for a season two, fingers crossed, what would you like to explore further with Nat?
Oh, I have been saying to everybody that I would like to see her have a love interest, only because as an actor, I'd love to have a love interest. But also, boy or girl, I've been trying to like play with Nat and trying to figure out, who she would like anyway. I mean, it wasn't a possibility in season one, but I don't know which direction she's going to swing. I think it would be so interesting, to leave the writers to that and to figure out Nat's story. But I would like to see her collaborating more with Harriet. I think that would be so fun to like play on their friendship. Definitely a little love interest. Yeah, those are the two main things. Just probably like Nat's career and then Nat's love life.
For sure. And then obviously the internship, it would be really cool to see her kind of on her own, growing and honing her craft. Tell me about the fan support and messages you've seen and received since the show's release, and what has that meant to you?
Honestly, it is a constant thing now. I have like a half an hour schedule in my diary to just like take a second off and cry just from sheer happiness. Everybody is so lovely. I mean, I was preparing to get some hate and to get, maybe some not very nice comments, just because I guess that's kind of how it is. And everyone was like, just don't listen to them. But every single comment that I've gotten so far, every single message that I've got has been so, so lovely. And I feel the positivity come through from it. I think it's so lovely hearing, especially people message me saying, oh my gosh, Sri Lankan representation. I think those are the ones that make me beam at my phone, because obviously that was the goal in the first place. And it's so nice that people are saying that without me having to say that that was my goal. I think it's so lovely that people are recognizing that. And then I'm seeing so many messages from kids, and my mum's getting messages as well on Facebook and by strangers. It's lovely. It's so, so sweet. I mean, it's definitely overwhelming, seeing the notifications. So I've had to, mute my Instagram a tiny bit. But I just think it's so lovely. And I like that people are making edits of Nat and Harriet as well. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my God, Nat's your favorite character. Stop. Yeah, so I have to like them all, and I have to comment on them all, and I have to, show the appreciation, because yeah, and I've saved them all to a little folder as well.
I know you've been kind of reposting some on Instagram, like the scene packs and from TikTok, and you also have a few fan accounts dedicated to you now with like Rochelle with your name in them. So is that still very surreal for you to see?
It's so surreal. It genuinely is like, you like me? Like, I mean, it's to like me enough to, I guess tolerate me is one thing, but to create an Instagram account, I just think it just melts my heart. It's like, oh, and obviously I follow them all. I don't know if that makes me seem really, really vain, but I promise I'm just grateful. These, the people are just, oh, just so lovely. People are so pretty and beautiful and just great. It's just, yeah, I'm feeling really, really happy and grateful.
We will go through some tweets now.
Harriet and Nat and Geek Girl are so beautiful. Nat's face card is phenomenal. Oh my gosh, that is very, very lovely. Thank you so much. Um, that's really lovely. That's so weird because I've never had anybody never, yeah, I just didn't think I would get compliments like this. Watching Geek Girl 10 years after reading the book was such a good feeling. I really liked the way Harriet was portrayed and the way that people who care about her accommodated her. Oh, absolutely. I think Geek Girl is such a phenomenal series in the way that it's written. I think so much time and love and effort and energy went into it. And I'm glad that people are seeing that. The one thing I love Geek Girl, like about Geek Girl, is Harriet and Nat's friendship. There are arguments on their friendship, you know what I mean? But the thing is, they have each other's backs and support on their dreams. Absolutely, absolutely. Harriet and Nat love each other so much. I've seen so many videos of people like shipping Harriet and Nat like together as a couple, and I think that is very interesting. Go you.
It's like forget about Nick Park. And people are like, Harry and Nat. Did you and Emily have any discussions about your characters' friendship and kind of talk through that together? Did you and them kind of have your own ideas and interpretations of their friendship?
I think we didn't even have a conversation about it. I think we just riffed off of each other so normally as people that it translated. I'd hope it translated well onto screen. I think, they had their idea of what Harriet was and I had my idea of what Nat was. And when we brought that together, it just seemed like it was just like such a cosmic fit. And I think that was largely to do with how Holly Smale wrote the characters anyway, and how everything came together in the series. And I'm finished. Absolutely loved Geek Girl. Harriet, Nat, Toby, and Wilbur brought to life from book to the screen. Everything I loved about the books captured in a highly bingeable series. Anyone for season 2? Please, I want a season 2. Everyone wants a season 2. Let's get a season 2. Oh, that is so lovely. I think I don't even have Twitter, so all of these tweets that I'm reading are just, they're so lovely. I got sent one the other day from Manny that was a screenshot that someone had posted of me on Twitter saying she's so pretty. And I laid in my bed and I cried for 20 minutes. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I think that it's just so nice to hear people being so kind. Oh, everyone's so lovely.
In terms of filming, like I know that it was the majority was filmed in London, where you're kind of based in the UK. Were you jealous that you didn't get to go to Canada for that shoot?
So jealous, because when we first read the contracts, when I first read it with my parents, there was a little like stip about Canada, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I get to go to Canada. I've never been to like anywhere on my own, and also let alone for work. And I figured that Natalie wasn't going, and I was like, oh shucks, but it's all right. I mean, it looked like it was a lot of fun for everybody there, and obviously definitely had a lot of FOMO because I wanted to be there, but it looked so fun for everybody, and I wasn't jealous one bit. I think everybody had so much fun, and while I wish I could have been there, it wasn't for the plot. So
I mean, there's always the future. You never know with Nat and her fashion. Maybe it will take her to Canada for one of these shows and showcases in the future. Now, do you have any upcoming projects that you can share?
This is such a great, so many people have asked me this, and I always feel really awkward being like, no, I have absolutely nothing. But at the moment, when I came out of Geek Girl, I decided that I wanted to go and do a little bit more formal training, just so that I could really work on the craft, and that if I was ever lucky enough to be on any other projects, I could really go into it with, knowledge and confidence. So I've kind of been focusing on that at the moment. And I also wanted to kind of sit in the Geek Girl madness for a little bit because I didn't know how big the show was going to be, but I wanted to remember this one as like as my first job and, you know, not be hit with all the craziness. So not for the moment, but I'm really, really hoping that something comes across soon. And, you know, if anyone wants me on their team, I'd be more than happy to. You don't even have to pay me, I'll do it for free. I like to act. So yeah, no, nothing at the moment.
You did say in an interview that you did film or you did do a project in Prague or something like that. So I'm not sure if that was a secret, but it is out there. I mean, fingers crossed that it's either musical theater or a rom-com because I know that those are two kind of genre projects that you'd love to cross off your bucket list in the future.
You know, so the job in Prague, it's I completely forgot about that. I'm so sorry. So the job in Prague wasn't necessarily an acting one. It was just a commercial that I filmed for. It's nothing that anybody over here is gonna see. It's I think it's only being released in Amsterdam. It's like their phone brand commercial where I play a dancer, which to be fair, I'm really happy that I got to do that because obviously it's a different set, different experience, different country as well. Everybody was so lovely on that. And yeah, I mean, I guess now I can say I'm a working dancer too, because you know, I did my first little professional dancing job, which was so fun and definitely a very humbling experience because I was so tired the whole time. But yeah, no, that's the only real thing that I like thing that I've really had going on. Other than that, no, just waiting to see what waits for me in the acting world.
Was that your first time in Czech Republic?
It was, and it did not disappoint. It was very, very lovely. I love the country. The people there as well are so, so nice. I mean, the first day that I got there, because it was the first time traveling anywhere on my own with like no friends, no family with me. So I got there, and the first thing I thought about doing was I want to go see what the nightlife is like. So within like the first half an hour, I put all my stuff down, I got ready, and I thought, let's head to the club. I went to the club on my own, and it was a very interesting experience.
I mean, it's always cool though to be in a new city, especially for any kind of project. So, I mean, hopefully you get to cross many more, you know, countries, cities off your list in the future. I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Oh, what a good question. I think I would be, I'm trying to like remember all the tastes of ice cream. At the moment, so my taste changes quite a lot. I think I would be double chocolate chip, but with an addition of some fudge in there because you've got to do that. And then also maybe some like hazelnuts on the top because that's what I like to eat. And also I'm brown and also I like Nutella and I think it just tastes really good. It's very sugary. I love sugar.
Great way to end things off. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. You asked so many lovely questions, and I just felt like the conversation flowed really, really well. Thank you so, and you're so pretty, by the way. So
Who's talking? You're talking? I mean, I can't wait for what's to come for you. I hope that you reconsider and release original music as well. Have to add that in there. But for all those watching and listening, you can catch Rochelle in Geek Girl. It is streaming now on Stack TV in Canada and Netflix worldwide. Season 2 is hopefully coming soon. I was gonna say coming soon, but it hasn't been announced yet. But it's doing so well on the charts. So it's kind of like, to me, it's going to be a given. It's almost like, when is the news coming out? I'm sure you're all waiting as well.
yeah, absolutely. We're all waiting. I mean, it's so crazy that it's number one show watched worldwide. It's so insane, so crazy. Who would have thought? But hopefully a season 2 is on the cards.
And it's only been climbing, so continue watching and streaming season 1, and we will see you next time.
Bye.